Welcome to this episode of Adam Answers. For this episode, I'm going to read a question from Malak Ben Gaber, and she sent me a message via Facebook. And it's a really important question, so I just wanted to read it directly. She said, I am involved in work in Derna, Libya, where tragedy has hit in so many ways. I'm trying to put together some SF work that might come in handy once the wave of psychological first aid and the focus on PTSD debriefing has passed. I'm struggling with the following. Many people, especially children, have lost their parents, and most members in their immediate support system. Some families saw the loss of 3 generations in 45 minutes. How do I go about asking about the interactional, or as Yvonne Dolan called it, the VIP questions regarding significant others? In many instances, these people are no longer there. The challenge for me is not that a person has no one, which is often a possibility, but that they had close loved ones and they now no longer do. Pets, stuffed animals, and other meaningful things were all washed away. Those around the children might be distant relatives, other survivors, or volunteers. Do I just assume that these people are now significant others and continue with the questions? So I think this is such a valuable question, and it just is heart-wrenching to think about these kids in these really difficult situations. And so the first thing that I would want to say is we want to really make sure that we don't minimize the experience that these kids have had. We really want to sit with them in that and to acknowledge it and to say, oh, man, I cannot imagine how hard life must be for you. The other thing that I would say is that we don't want to forget that important people, even though they aren't here anymore, doesn't mean that they won't have an influence or can't have an influence on the child in a particular moment. And so I think one of the things that I would really want to focus on and think about is to say, in some sense, if so-and-so, your mom, your dad, your grandparent, your sibling, whoever was really, really important to them, if they could see you, if they could notice you, if they could let you know somehow that they were still cheering you on, that they were still hoping for the best for you, how would you know? What would you notice that would let you know, even though they can't do it physically, even though they can't be right here with you, but you knew that who they were is still impacting who you are? So I would really want to focus still on how do they convey to you, how do you carry on even what they had already given you? What did you know about your mom or your dad or your sibling that you knew when they were happy with you? They knew when you were doing just the right thing. What did they notice about you when you were at your very, very best? And so even though they're not noticing right now in this moment, they can remember, they can go back. And I think this is one of the really important, valuable things about history of the outcome is that there are moments in history where these people cheered them on or supported them or helped them in some way. And the memory of that can serve the same function. It can be, what did they do? And if somehow they were able to convey that same trust or that same belief or that same love for you, what would you notice and how would life be different? I think that's one thing that's really, really important is we can put it back into the history. The other thing that we could do is go into the resource talk, and we could say in some sense, what did your parent give you, or what did your parents, your grandparents pass on to you that helped you to be successful, that helped you to feel close to them? Maybe it's that your eyes look the same as their eyes, or you have the same color hair that they had, or something like that. And you could say, and if you knew that you were honoring their eyes as you moved forward, what would be different about the way that you went forward as you were honoring their eyes? Or sometimes they gave us a legacy of love. They gave us a legacy of support. I remember all the time when I was a little kid that my mom or my dad would do such and such. And on big important days, they would make me breakfast. And then we could easily say, and if they weren't able to actually make you breakfast, but on an important day, you remembered that if they were here, they would make you breakfast. What difference would that make in the way that you went about your day? How did you inherit a legacy of love or compassion or determination or courage? And if you used that courage in a way that honored them, What difference would that make to you? And so I think there's a lot of things in the resource that section that we could talk about. And finally, we could put it into the future of the outcome and say, in some sense, if tomorrow you woke up and you knew that determination or the courage that you needed was there, and somehow you could catch a glimpse of your dad noticed that you were using that courage, what difference would it make, and how would that impact you? And so we can put it into the future. And so I would say, no, absolutely, we don't want to forget those people. We don't want to assume that they don't have an influence. But in some sense, we want to assume that they have the biggest influence, that they have the biggest impact on what's going on in someone's life. And we want to involve them in every single step of the way. I think one of the things that I would say from my own life is that I've moved around the country quite a bit, and I've lived far away from my family members. Most of my family members were hours away from me, but I could constantly think about them. And I could say, if my sister were here, we would really be laughing at this point, and that would cheer me up. Or I could think about, if my younger brother was here with me, we would probably be having a conversation and a debate, and we would really be thinking about things and pulling things apart. And I can put him in and I can say, if he were here, what would he have to say about this situation? And so I think just because they're not physically close to us doesn't mean that they can't still have an impact on how we do things, how we live our lives, how we think about things, even how we experience things. And so I would say it's our job as solution-focused therapists to remember people who aren't present still impact us. And so we want to use that to the fullest extent because these are the most important people that are in someone's life. So simply because they've passed away doesn't mean that they don't have an influence. And I would say we want to lovingly, caringly, really softly invite those people to be present and for their influence to still be felt. So I hope that helps. Let me know what your thoughts are. And thanks again, Malak, for a beautiful question.